Hello, talkers, and happy end of your Thursday today. I posted on my story, but I had some cancellations this week and had a episode scheduled for today with this amazing guest, Stephanie. And so here we are, 8 p.m. We're getting it uploaded because it's Thursday, so that means we're talking, okay? All right. I'm feeling jazzed because I just ordered a pickle witch. It is the last day to get the pickle witch from Jimmy John, so I apologize to all the local Midvale workers. You're probably making a million of them today. And I saw a TikTok of someone who works at Jimmy John's, and they're like, I cannot wait until November 15th when I never have to make a single one of these again. Respect it, but I can't wait to devour it, and I will be letting you guys know my review probably on next week's episode, but I will definitely post something on Instagram as well. So that's why we got this. We got this great energy, and I just recorded with Stephanie. She's hilarious and seriously so okay, here are the words I wrote down while we were recording. Respectful. Okay, everything she said was with kindness and grace and thoughtfulness that others might, have different goals and ideas than her, which is so refreshing. So really love that. Super accepting, super aware, and very curious. So super awesome. I had a great time recording with her. Today's episode is all about intuitive eating. So just keep that in mind as you go through and listen. And honestly, I know a lot of people give trigger warnings for pretty much every content out there, but as someone who struggles with eating, I felt like this episode is actually very inspiring. So no trigger warning, but just a heads up of that is what we are talking about today. Really, I have no other thoughts. Today's episode is awesome. There's a lot of great information, and I will link all of her socials and information in the show notes. She also shared a couple resources for raising intuitive eaters. So if you have kiddos and you're interested in this, I will link those as well. And let me just tell you more about Stephanie, and then we will welcome her. Stephanie is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and virtual intuitive eating coach. She values weight-neutral, non-diet nutrition, culture and queer inclusion, neurodiversity awareness, and cannabis destigmatization. Destigmatization. Tricky word. Okay. She was a competitive cheerleader for 10 years and pole vaulted in high school. She loves fantasy smut books like A Court of Thorns and Roses and Fourth Wing, which most of us here do. And her favorite way for somatic release is a solo twerk session, LMAO. So please join me in welcoming Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello.
I'm so excited for this episode. I think it's going to be so informative and very helpful for all the listeners today.
I'm very excited too. People rarely ask me to be on podcasts, and I was very honored for the invite, so I'm excited to dive in.
Yay! Well, when I saw your profile, I was like, she's funny, she's smart, we've got to have her on the pod.
You're like, she's just like me for real.
I said, relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm going to start with my happy, funny, sad moments from this week. So my happy is yesterday, me and my fiance Grace went to a friend's house for dinner, and she made us a pot roast with sweet potatoes and asparagus, and it was one of the most delightful dinners I've had in a long time.
Delish. Love.
Yes, it was great. And she didn't have lemon, so she, when she was making the asparagus, she put lime juice on it, and it was fire. It was so good.
I constantly use lemon or lime oppositely whenever I don't have the other, so I fully support that.
Love. Okay, and then my funny is that I recently reconnected with a childhood best friend, and we just crafted all the time. That was really what we did all the time. And so I was remembering we used to play with these things. I looked them up, and they're called wiki sticks. Have you heard of those?
The ones that you bend?
Yes, and they're sticky. Yes. I hadn't thought of those in forever, and I was just laughing, telling Grace about how we were obsessed with those.
Oh no, I still am obsessed with those because they're like such a stim
Amazing.
for me. My niece, it was her birthday and we went to a restaurant and they give those to the kids instead of like crayons. And I
What?
made her a birthday crown with it. So
That's stunning.
love.
That's amazing. I haven't even seen those since like forever. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go find some immediately.
they're great.
Okay, and then my sad is I went to the gym at my school and I was just kind of like observing, and of course, like the majority of people that were there were men,
Of course.
and it just makes me sad. Like the way that women are treated, and like men, not focus spaces, but like, when there's more men than women.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
100%. I was a gym rat for a very long time, and that was like the biggest barrier to getting into the gym consistently was just like how many men there was everywhere.
And they're like, for the most part, right? Like they don't go out of their way to be mean, but they're not nice.
No,
They
they're definitely not
stare.
nice. And also, I have had mean ones. I have ones that have told
Yes.
me you're doing that wrong, or like come over and ask if I need help or something. And I'm like, I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep. And like I was in like and just like observing all the women, and like they all just kind of like stick to their little corners,
I
and like
know.
all the men are like taking up all this space.
Hella
And
space.
yes. And I walked away for like seriously maybe 30 seconds, probably not even that, to get like a different weight. And I came back and they were like grabbing my stuff that I
I
was
believe
using.
it.
And I was like, hello? And
So
then when
annoying.
I act upset that they were taking my space that I'd been in for the last 20 minutes, I'm the bitch. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Well, you're
Makes no
not,
sense.
that's their space. So you're supposed
Right.
to just
Right.
take up as minimal as possible and then like move when they want whatever space you were occupying,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. So that was definitely my sad this week. I was like, really? Come on.
That is a sad
Come
one.
on. Okay, so I'd love to hear yours.
Okay, for sure. So my happy is I just got back from a 5-day trip to Hawaii with like one of my best friends. And literally we did
Okay.
nothing but like sunbathe and swim and relax. And it was also like right
Yes.
before my birthday. So that was obviously the happiest
Stunning.
I've been this month. That was an amazing trip.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
my funny is I have a 6-month-old kitten named Saber, and she's recently been eating like a shit ton of paper. Like we can't have the paper towels out, we can't have the toilet paper out,
Yeah.
and she's acquired a new nickname. And if you've ever had like a pet that you just like keep adding nicknames onto,
Yes.
she's now Paper Eater, and my niece and
Okay.
nephew call her that exclusively now, and it's just hilarious when they come over. They're like 5 and 7,
Yeah.
and they're like Paper Eater, Paper Eater. So that's the last thing that I like laughed hard at. So that's why
Yes.
I put it
Yes.
funny.
Yeah, that's adorable.
Yeah, she is such a paper eater. It's so bad. And then my sad is I just finished Love is Blind today. So I'm out of shitty TV to watch.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out what I'm going to, what mind-numbing reality TV I'm going to watch next, because I just finished Love is Blind literally today.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck in your search.
Thank you.
Yes, you got it. I don't know. I have like a desire to watch reality TV, but then I just like don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I commend you for watching it, because I love like everything I see about it, and I watched a couple episodes here and there. I'm like, it's so fun, and like, yes, mind numbing. Like,
yes. And I personally love like the messier the better. I have like a lot of friends in like the mental health space, and I swear to God, every mental health professional I know loves reality TV, because it's kind of like watching a case study unfold. I love to psychoanalyze people that I don't know enough information about, just to like act like I know what I'm talking about. So reality TV is the perfect place to like get out that like gossipy energy without like doing any harm to anyone else.
Yes. The third party, right? Where it's like, yes. Yeah, totally. I respect it. Like,
thank you.
Right? Like, great job for not, doing that with your close friends and family.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just want to start with you telling the audience a little bit about your current space and career and what you do.
Totally.
And then we've got some great questions we'll go over.
Sweet. Okay. So, I am a dietitian, a registered dietitian, and the current space that I work in is intuitive eating, which, if you haven't heard, is essentially just like eating like a normal person, listening to your hunger and fullness cues. It's a weight neutral approach to nutrition. But I specialize specifically in neurodivergent populations, and have recently started to hold a lot of conversations about cannabis use as well, and how neurodivergence and cannabis use kind of inform your eating for a lot of people. So yeah, that's kind of the space that I'm in. I haven't always been in this niche of a space in nutrition, but I always wanted to be an intuitive eating dietitian. I always knew I didn't want to facilitate like intentional weight loss or anything like that. But the more work that I did in supporting people through their intuitive eating journeys, the more I realized that my own neurodivergence was serving them in like being informed about that. And I just started to attract a lot more people who related to my lived experience of being neurodivergent, being a cannabis user, and making that complicate your eating habits significantly. So yeah, that's the space that I'm in now. I'm mostly on Instagram, and then I have clients both one-on-one and in a group setting. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Awesome. Yeah, okay. That's perfect. That kind of sets the scene and like your credentials as we kind of go through these questions. Yeah. So
yay.
The first we have are from our audience. Yes. And the first one is just tips to stop binge and kind of stress eating.
Okay, amazing. So binge and stress eating are probably one and the same, but when it comes to overeating, it's really important that you understand the root causes of your overeating, because they are different for everyone, but they're very similar. So it's important first to understand why you're overeating, and then you can work on, addressing those root causes and minimizing the frequency and severity of it. So specifically, the most common root causes of overeating that I see is inconsistent or under eating throughout the daytime. So if you are somebody who meal skips, if you are somebody who ignores your hunger cues, goes very long without eating, or has been on strict diets in the past and has a restrictive mindset with food, and then you get to the end of your day and you tend to overeat or binge, you're never going to resolve the overeating and binging unless you first address the fact that you are not eating adequately during the day. So that would be my first recommendation, is like to take an assessment of whether or not you're missing opportunities to give your body nourishment earlier in the day. And that's going to help you essentially regulate your appetite for the evenings. And then the stress element typically is exacerbated by that idea that you're under eating throughout the day, but also overeating can definitely be a coping strategy. So if you feel like it is stress related, then it's important to address the feelings that are leading to the overeating and the unmet emotional needs that overeating is fulfilling, and kind of start to trial and error and troubleshoot like alternative ways to cope with those feelings, because it's okay to let food bring you joy. It's okay to emotionally eat. Like, who doesn't love a brownie after a shitty day? Like, it's totally fine. The issue and the harm surfaces when you are emotionally overeating, when you're allowing that negative emotion to essentially cause you to ignore your body's cues. And it's usually more of like a numbing and escaping avoidant behavior. So usually when people come to me with stress eating, that's what we're kind of unpacking, is like, what are you running away from? And how do we sit and hold space for these feelings and explore alternative coping strategies, and totally allow food to be part of that equation, but just stop letting it be the only thing that you reach for.
Yeah, I love that, because all the time when you hear like how to, I don't know, you just always hear like, don't let food be in control. Don't let food be a part of your emotions. So I love that. Like, well, and like too, like all of our holidays and our celebrations, like food's included. Like,
exactly. Food is emotional. Food, I think that saying that food is not emotional, or that you shouldn't have emotions tied to eating, is a very like, I hate to say it, but like colonizer mindset, in terms of like every other culture uses food as a means of togetherness and cultural expression, and how to show love to people and how to show care. So to act like that's an emotionless thing is so crazy to me. So yeah, don't hold shame. Also, shame and guilt are definitely exacerbators for overeating. No need to hold shame about food bringing you pleasure and joy. It's more about tackling like what is causing you to dishonor your body's cues of fullness and eat past what's comfortable for you.
Wow, that is great, and a very great tip. I'm like, I feel like that's easy to kind of start doing, I guess.
Yeah,
would be
totally.
a good way to put that. Awesome. Okay, the next question from the audience was just what habits can I build to improve my intuitive eating?
Totally. Was it intuitive eating specifically they were asking for?
It was, yeah.
Okay. So, what habits can you build to help your intuitive eating? I will tell you, you cannot listen to hunger and fullness cues unless you are eating consistently. That's going to be my number one recommendation time and time again. There's also no point in focusing on like adequate nutrition and talking about, fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals and fiber and all of that stuff if you're just simply not eating enough. It doesn't matter how much you try to healthify things or how much you try to listen to your hunger and fullness cues. If you're eating an inadequate amount of food, even if it's only for part of the day, like if you binge eat at night, but you undereat in the daytime, you're not going to have regulated hunger and fullness cues. You're not going to be able to be intuitive with your eating. So if you're somebody who's really looking to be intuitive with your eating and kind of in this very like communicative relationship with your body where it's like, hey, I want food. And you're like, oh, I got you. And then it's like, hey, stop eating. And you're like, okay, I'm done. In order to get to that space, you first have to provide an abundant food environment for your body to feel safe enough to have regulated cues that aren't just like roller coastering throughout the day.
Love it. That's perfect.
Cool.
So all of this is kind of a side note.
Yeah.
And you can choose how in depth you want to answer it. But I'm just curious because a lot of people, or it's kind of popular, and I've heard, so many benefits of intermittent fasting. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Totally. If it works for you, fantastic. If you developed overeating or binge eating, stop. That's my opinion about it. The research and literature for intermittent fasting is similar to all the research about anything relating to weight loss. Usually does result in weight loss as long as there's a calorie restriction. Not a lot of data to suggest that it's sustainable past like a 5-year mark. So I'm not somebody who's like anti-diet. If you diet, you're bad. If you want to diet, that's totally fine. But if you are somebody who struggles with overeating and you have a rocky relationship with food, placing restrictions on your eating habits in any capacity is not going to help you. There's really not a one size fits all approach. So it's not that I'm necessarily like anti intermittent fasting for everyone, but the people who are intermittently fasting are not listening to their hunger and fullness cues. They're on a rigid diet that they have to follow rules in order to sustain. And like, that's their choice and they can do that. But if you're trying to just like eat like a normal person and not have food take up a significant amount of your brain space, then intermittent fasting is probably not going to be helpful for you.
Totally. And does that kind of play in more with neurodivergence?
Totally. Yeah. So neurodivergent populations, it's this really negative feedback loop, right? Because we tend to be more inclined to do that under eating throughout the day, overeating at night because of a combination of things. We don't necessarily feel our hunger cues naturally. A lot of us suffer from what's called interoception, which is like concept that like you don't feel your body's cues like a normal person. Like you even push off using the restroom and things like that. So that tends to lead to a lot of under eating throughout the day. And then on top of that, a lot of like our executive dysfunction and demand avoidance tends to make feeding ourselves throughout the day just kind of a last priority. Like not a lot of us like wake up like, oh, I can't wait to make 17 food decisions today. Like so nobody wants to do that. So a lot of times that leads to procrastinating and pushing off eating because they just don't want to be bothered. They're not feeling hungry. Like, why would I? And then obviously that dysregulates their appetite in the evenings. Their hunger finally hits. A lot of neurodivergent populations are also using cannabis, so that can like ramp their appetite up. And then they're also typically using food as a coping strategy to kind of like decompress from the day, unmask, and deal with whatever emotions that they were essentially like not feeling all day. So yes, that cycle of under and overeating is absolutely exacerbated in neurodivergent populations.
Yeah. Awesome. This is great information.
Yay, I'm so glad.
Yay. Okay, so kind of switching gears, the next audience question was tips and just any thoughts on intuitive eating with toddlers.
Totally. So depends on the age of a toddler. But a great resource for this is a woman called Ellyn Satter. It's spelled ELLYN SATTER. And you can look her up. She has like so much information on her website about essentially like helping toddlers eat. There's also a book called How to Raise Intuitive Eaters. Really recommend that as well. But just to like keep it really short, children are naturally intuitive eaters. They stop being intuitive eaters as soon as outside noise starts to try to influence their food choices, tells them to finish their plate, tells them to take 3 more bites, tells them they can't have dessert unless they finish their dinner. That's when children start to realize like, oh, I shouldn't listen to I don't want to eat anymore, but I'm supposed to, my mom's telling me I should. And then all of a sudden they're no longer intuitive. So if you have toddlers, let them eat. There is some structure, obviously, and nuance to that. You can't just like let a toddler go free for all. Like they need structure. But for the sake of time, I'd recommend looking at those resources, How to Raise an Intuitive Eater and Ellyn Satter, because they can give you more info on like the structure to support intuitive eating, because it is very natural for toddlers. And if you get them doing it young, they'll thank you later.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I think this generation specifically is like, all right, what are we doing?
They're like, how do I not do what my mother did to me, to my kid?
Pretty much, right? And not to their fault, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at what they, like, I know a lot of this generation's parents, their parents were boomers, right? So Great Depression, it's like they were raised in such scarcity and, right?
Totally.
So it's very generational, but I love it.
Yay.
Yeah, and great resources. That's perfect. I will link those in the show notes. So if you have a memory of a goldfish like I do, it will be there.
Perfect.
Okay, so our first question about confidence is, what ways do you see confidence around eating in others?
Perfect. So it's funny that someone asked about toddlers, because when I think of confident eaters, I do think of toddlers, which might sound very strange, but before children are tainted by like outside expectations of what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, they are just listening to their bodies. And if you've ever been around a toddler for an extended period of time, you've probably seen this, where you might serve them something and then they eat 3 to 4 bites of it and they say, I'm done. And you're like, are you serious? Like, you need to eat more. And they just go off. And then 20 minutes later, they're like, I'm hungry. Right. And then the next day they might eat like an adult sized portion of a meal. And you're like, holy moly, that kid can put it away. And it's like, because their body was compensating for the fact that they underate the day before. Like, and their body knows that, and they're just trusting it, and they don't really have to think twice about it. So although they're not like walking around like, yeah, I feel confident, they just have this inherent trust in their bodies that is so fun and fascinating to watch, which I'm sure if you're a parent or have littles around you at all, you've noticed this and maybe been a little bit frustrated by it at times. But that's definitely my biggest example. But another population that I see confidence around food with is men. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah,
right? Not to generalize. There are definitely men who like struggle with their relationships with food and disordered eating, but like on a very basic level, like the majority of men are just like eating, and they're not really thinking twice about it. And like sometimes they might benefit from thinking a little bit more about it, right? Putting more intention into their nutrition or something. But like men are not as influenced and affected by, fears of weight gain and body insecurity and these things that a lot of women have. I had a reel go viral a long time ago that was like, when you're watching your boyfriend eat and you realize he's naturally an intuitive eater because he hasn't been told to diet since he was 8, right? So like that, a lot of men are just like, yeah, I just like ate because I was hungry. Like, and you'll see him eat like 5 pieces of pepperoni from the fridge and walk away like it's nothing, or take 1 scoop of ice cream and be like, oh, okay, I'm good. And you're like, how are you doing that? Right. And it's just because those narratives didn't infiltrate his own body wisdom. So that's where I see confidence play out the most, definitely, is in men.
Awesome. Yeah. Wish it wasn't that way, right?
And yeah, like you're saying, not a great thing, but
yeah. And like you're saying, right? Like it's on that very basic level, but for the most part, I would agree with that. And yeah, like you're saying, like that metabolism goes into play too, of like they don't have the pressures as much of weight gain, but they also just don't gain weight quite so easily either, right?
Totally.
So,
yep, totally.
Yeah, dang. Okay, so my next question, and this is my favorite question to ask people, is so on your own personal journey of intuitive eating, as you've kind of shared that neurodivergent, you had to figure that out for yourself.
Yep.
Is there something that happened or something that you did that kind of was like, okay, I got this, like I can do this? Maybe, you know, it didn't make any changes right in that moment, but it was like, okay, I can do this.
Totally. I think my biggest one is when I unfollowed everybody. So it's actually one of the first things that I recommend that my clients do when they decide they want to start working together is I'm like, we need a social media cleanse because I mean, I'm sure everybody knows, like, comparison is the thief of everything. But when it comes to intuitive eating, in order to be confident in it, there has to be a level of knowing that, like, this isn't for everybody, but this is what you want to do. So it's really important, especially in the beginning, to kind of like put those blinders up. So for me, it was like, okay, I followed a ton of these, like, I'm sure people can relate. Gymshark, Fitspo, diety accounts that when I followed them, I thought they were kind of like positive, motivating people for me. And for some people they are. Like, it's a me thing. It's totally a me thing. But for me, it was just kind of like leading to a lot of comparisons. And these people were not on intuitive eating journeys. They weren't struggling, or at least not talking about struggling with binge eating and under eating and all those things that I was struggling with. So I really recommend like unfollowing people. If the people you're following, especially people you're following like for inspiration, or calorie counting and macro tracking and doing all of these things like that, you know, you aren't wanting to do anymore and don't align with intuitive eating, then they're no longer a source of inspo for you. It just is what it is. And like, you can love those people. Maybe you don't want to unfollow them. Maybe you want to just mute them for a little while until you feel more confident in your own journey. But like, it's okay to like put blinders up and quiet the noise and protect your own peace. We can't control the algorithms on social media, but we can control like who we follow and what media we engage with, which does kind of inform the algorithm, right? So like, you are on social media probably a lot throughout the day. That's a lot of information that you're absorbing that is making significant impacts to your subconscious. And if the only media relating to nutrition and health that you're consuming is people doing shit that you know has harmed you, that's not going to help you build confidence in the journey outward, right? So I recommend unfollowing people that are not aligned with your intuitive eating journey, or muting them if that works better for you. And following some more intuitive eating specific accounts for the sake of like knowing that you're not alone, knowing that your struggles are super normal and valid, and being able to see other people have great success and feel amazing from intuitive eating, I think can be a really big motivator. So definitely that. And then once I like got through the messy middle, is what we call it, of intuitive eating, and like kind of sorted through a lot of that stuff and started to really feel like, okay, I know when I'm hungry, I know when I'm full, then I can see content and it doesn't affect me. I can follow somebody who's posting their calories for the day and I don't think twice about it. But in the beginning, that was harmful to me. So I really recommend protecting your peace. I think that was one of the biggest aha moments for me.
I love it. That's great. And like you're saying, like it just plays into that subconscious. So even if you're not like super engaged with it, like you're seeing it and that's a part of it. So
it's the number one part of it. Like that's the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand is like, when it comes to how you feel about food and how you feel about your body, it has very little to do with like, and not to say that journal affirmations and things like that don't help, but like it is about the things that you are communicating to your subconscious via the content you're consuming and the actions that you are engaging in. So if you're trying to change the way that you think and feel about food and your body, then you have to change the things that you are consuming in order to do that.
Right. Awesome. Okay, I have kind of a side question from that.
Totally.
hearing you talk about that, so, right, we have control over who we follow on social media.
Yep.
So, and then just you talking about a man too, I'm like, my wheels are turning. So I'm just
Yep.
thinking for all the people listening that are struggling with overeating, undereating, any of the things, and they have a partner who is really into dieting and really into, those kinds of things. Like, do you have any recommendations or any thoughts on that? Because, like, just when
Totally.
you were talking, I'm like, we can't unfollow the people that are closest to us. So, yeah,
Nope.
whether it's a partner or a parent or a sibling, and it's
Yep.
like very constant, like, any
Yep.
recommendations or kind of thoughts there?
Totally. So there's actually a principle of intuitive eating called challenge the food police. Like, it's a whole section of the intuitive eating principles. But it comes down very simply to boundary setting. So again, like I said, when you get to a certain point of confidence in your own intuitive eating journey, nothing other people say or do is going to change your mind about the fact that, like, I feel fucking good right now with what I'm doing. I don't want to hear what you have to say. But especially in the beginning, if you have a partner, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to sit down and let them understand what you're going through and why this is the journey that you're taking. I've had tons of clients who've been like, my spouse does not get it, or my spouse has seen me diet 17 times and he just is saying that I'm doing the same thing again. Like, he doesn't understand. So for the people that you think will actually hold space for you and respect you enough to hear you out, it's worth telling people, it's worth sharing. And if that's your partner, they should be holding space for the fact that you have that you have some work to do on your relationship with food. Like, if they aren't, then that's a bigger issue. But if you are, feeling comfortable enough, it's time to boundary set. So that looks like explaining to them what you're struggling with, explaining to them why you want to be doing intuitive eating, and set some boundaries about what they can and can't make comments about, and what they can and can't, bring into your space. Obviously, you're not going to be telling other people what they can do. If your partner wants to diet, then your partner wants to diet. That is not your journey to invade upon. Like, they might be just fine dieting, and that's fine, but you can tell them, I don't want to see that scale, or please don't weigh my food, or please don't announce how many calories are in the meal that you just served the both of us, right?
Sure.
Like, things like that.
Yeah.
So definitely be boundary setting with anyone that you feel comfortable boundary setting with. And then if it's like a random aunt that you just don't feel like arguing with, right? Like, there's situations where, like,
well, with the holidays coming up, right? Like, there's going to be some more of these kind of interactions, shall we say?
Yep. So I'm more on team shut it down than I am on team I'm going to make a scene and boundary set and do this whole thing. Like, to me, that's just a little bit much for most situations, especially like a Thanksgiving table, right? Like, you don't need to be like, dieting is bad and this is why. And like, that is not, no one's going to be convinced by you saying that. So I really recommend trying to change the subject, or just going, oh, I don't really want to talk about that. Or I have, in certain situations, especially when it's like body related comments, been like, oh, that made me a little bit uncomfortable. Or, oh, that's a kind of strange thing to say. Or sometimes I'll go to Midwestern, and like kind of just leave it at that. And then kind of subject change. So don't feel like you need to be some like brave boundary setting soldier, and every time someone says something remotely triggering that you need to give them a whole spiel. Because, like, again, this is about you and your journey, but it's not about converting everybody else. So a little bit of a boundary setting with people that you do feel comfortable with, and people that you don't feel like spending that time having heavy conversations. Just a good old fashioned ope and a redirect is usually what I do.
Stunning. That's perfect.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that. I'm like, this is actually perfect timing with the holidays coming up to have this kind of information, because unfortunately, I would dare say every woman listening is going to get at least one comment on what they eat or their body during the holidays.
Truly. So, it's tragic.
But I love it. Protect your peace. You don't have to be, I like that. Would you say the soldier?
Yeah, like a boundary setting soldier. I also want to, what was I going to say? Shoot, I forgot. Okay, it'll come back to me. I do have ADHD, so, but anyways.
Perfect. Okay, we'll just go to the next kind of question here. So I'm curious, and this can be as in-depth or surface level as you want. I
Yeah.
think both answers are always great, but just kind of what did you think at any point in your life that confidence around eating was?
Yeah.
And now here you are with your education and your experience.
Yeah.
Now, what do you go, okay, that's what confidence in eating is?
Yes, I think it honestly is very similar to what true confidence is in any aspect of your life versus what people think it is. So I thought before that being confident in my food choices would be eating in a way that basically met like every external expectation possible. And I thought I would get to a point, even when I started intuitive eating, that like anyone who was like dieting or like a super uber healthy person, that I could like show them what I eat in a day and they'd be like, wow, you can really eat super healthy and be an intuitive eater.
Yeah.
But that isn't actually confidence. That's seeking external validation. That's trying to build confidence by meeting other people's standards. And it's actually just kind of being performative. Like what I realized with confidence and confidence in eating is that confidence means like knowing that like some people are going to look at your eating habits and not think that they're good enough. And that goes for literally anyone, right? Because we have keto people and low fat diet people and calorie counting people all critiquing each other. Like there's no such thing as an eating pattern that nobody is going to critique. So confidence in your food choices is not about other people looking at what you're eating and being like, yeah, that's good enough. That's healthy. That's good. Confidence in your eating habits is being able to say, okay, I know that a lot of people would look at my dietary pattern and have criticisms about it, and I don't give a shit. Because
Totally.
I feel happy. I feel satisfied.
Yeah.
I feel nourished. I feel at peace. I feel like I have freedom. I love my diet. I love the way that I eat. I don't care what anyone else has to say about it. It's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter if there's evidence that you should be eating a little bit less fat or a little bit less sugar. It doesn't matter if you just are satisfied with the way that you're eating, especially if you're satisfied also with like your current health status, then like that's confidence in your eating patterns. I also think it's important that if you want to have confidence in your own eating patterns, that you have to be clear about your own goals and your own intentions and what matters to you, and ensure that you have like a very actionable plan to meet those goals. Because like I'm only confident in my eating patterns because I decided what would kind of elicit satisfaction and confidence in my eating habits. And once I got to that point, I said, amazing, here I am.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And so spot on of like kind of confidence in general, right? Where it's like, and yeah, like when you're talking about what you think it was, I'm picturing like it has enough protein, it has enough fiber, it has enough nutrients. It's
Exactly.
vegan, but it's also like, yeah, and there's no way that you can do all of them.
Right. And I think that, you know, for anyone who's listening that's neurodivergent, you're going to take that even a step further, because the picture in your brain that you have of what a perfect diet looks like for you is probably just like slathered in ableism. And like, if you envision a diet where you're cooking everything from scratch and everything's raw and fresh, and you bought it at the farmer's market and you meal planned and you're making these intricate recipes and you're cooking for 5 hours a day, like, is that actually going to happen? And is that going to contribute to your quality of life and be something that's sustainable for you realistically? So part of my confidence also comes from the fact that like accepting that I have needs related to my neurodivergence, and like in order for me to eat, my meals and food choices have to be convenient and easy. And like, sorry, that's just how it is. I don't care what anyone has to say about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that you brought up your need, right? Like you identified that, and then now here you are confidently being able to eat.
Yep.
And quickly, because I relate to that.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I have another kind of side thought here.
Of course.
I'm intuitive eating, right?
Yeah.
Say you embark on the journey. You want to try this. It's like it sounds right, and say you relapse, for a lack of a better word.
Totally.
Like I'm kind of like picturing the journey, and how do you kind of overcome those moments of maybe you do go a day under eating or overeating, or you slip up or whatever, because I feel like with other kind of like restrictive diets,
Yeah.
it's almost like easier because you have like cheat days or this or that. But with intuitive eating, it's like I had someone ask if I do intuitive eating, and I haven't looked more into it and started that journey yet. But I'm like, just right off the bat, I'm like, it's not something you like do and like check off like, oh, I did the intuitive eat, right? Like it's a continual. So I'm just curious, like when you're on that journey and you don't intuitively eat, like how do you kind of come back from that?
Totally. So once you start, you don't stop. That's my recommendation, or that's my biggest like thing I want to put out there. Like if you decide to start intuitive eating, you don't stop. I guess if you start to like calorie count or like do something that's like intentionally like, okay, I don't want to intuitive eat anymore, I'm going to go start this diet, then that's a different story. Yeah. But if you're like, I want to intuitively eat, I'm done dieting, then the day that you start intentionally trying to figure out how to do that, like it doesn't stop ever again. Because every aspect of the intuitive eating journey is intuitive eating. And I know that that's like such a meta and vague answer, but I will elaborate. Long story short, it's oftentimes what we call like the messy middle, right? It's this concept that like you're not going to intuitively eat overnight. You're not going to understand your hunger cues and fullness cues overnight. And it's also part of that is like understanding that we're not doing a diet anymore. Okay. There's no black and white thinking. There's no pass or fail. There's what you do and what you do with it. Okay. So if I undereat sometimes, like there's days where I get to the end of the day and I go, oopsie, like even though I have this system down pat, there's unforeseen, life's gonna life. Okay. That's the beauty of intuitive eating, is like, it lets life. So life's gonna life. I undereat sometimes. And then I go, oh shoot. And then I go, anyways, and then I just eat, and then I just honor my body. And I do have intentions behind that. And I might say, oh, wow, why am I so hungry right now? Then I go, oh my God, I didn't snack this morning. Like, okay, now I'm going to be a little bit more mindful about how I enter this meal so that I minimize the likelihood of me like overeating or blazing through this meal very like unconsciously. But again, that's so intuitive. That's so cool to be like, oh, I did undereat today. Okay, well, anyways, and move on and adjust a little bit, pivot the plan if you need. So what I tell my clients, especially in the beginning, when they are having this fear of like, am I doing it right? That black and white kind of all or nothing thinking is still very much present. That diet mentality of like, oh, I did bad today, right? When that's still very present, I emphasize the fact that you are in your scientist era. You are essentially trying to better understand your dynamic with food and your tendencies and the way that your body responds to certain things. So in a day you undereat, the best thing you can do is like sit and reflect about it. Okay, what made me do that? What were the contributors to me undereating? How do I better prepare in the future? And then you move forward and you try again. And then with that newfound insight, then you put it into practice and you see what sticks and you see what doesn't. And then you go back to the drawing board. It's like not a big deal. But for a lot of people who are so used to this very much like black and white pass or fail mentality, they're like, oh my God, I'm not an intuitive eater. I'm a phony. Which is why having someone to support you in your journey can be really helpful, because constantly I'm like talking my clients out of a spiral in about 30 seconds flat. But like, it's just a like, bring me to earth right now. I feel like a failure. Right. And then it's like, girl, we're just going to move on. It's fine. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I was like, well, that's perfect, because clearly I am in that black and white thinking, but that makes a ton of sense. And that's perfect. And I really like that. Just like once you've started, like you started.
Yeah. Stay curious, I guess, would be kind of the biggest recommendation, is like, instead, another analogy that I use with my clients a lot is like, think of a scientist who's like studying a specific mold, right? When the mold grows or doesn't grow, they're not like, oh my God, what a bad mold, it's not growing. Or what a good mold, it's doing its job. They're just going, what circumstances are making this mold grow?
Wow.
And like, that's it. And then
Mic drop, like, episode's over. That's
you're the mold, girl. Be the mold.
Episode title right
Yeah.
there. Be the mold. I love it. Okay, another side question, because you're making such great points and my brain is just like running with this. You said the word unconscious, and immediately made me think of when I'm eating, I have the hardest time like just sitting down and eating. Like very hard. But I feel like, I don't know. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, right? Like I've seen things that it's like, if you watch TV while you eat, you're like going to be obese forever and you have terrible habits, right?
Totally.
I'm sure there's a balance. Curious on your thoughts with that neurodivergence, right? Because I think that plays a part.
Bingo.
Like I'm like, I can't sit still. Like I do way better if like I've got a bowl and like I'm working on stuff and I'm coming back and forth. Like
exactly. So long story short, it's different for everybody. And that concept of eat without distractions is totally a neurotypical person made that up. Like, I'm sorry, but like if you sit me at a table with no other stimuli and tell me to focus on my meal, I'm blacking out. I am maladaptive daydreaming. I'm thinking about my to-do list. I'm not in my body at all whatsoever. So I recommend that you explore what nurtures presentness and what pulls you out of your body while eating. It's going to be different for everybody. I'm an iPad baby personally. A lot of my clients are. So I'm a YouTube girl. Like I love a YouTube video while I eat, and like that nurtures mindfulness for me. It gives me enough stimulation to not go somewhere else in my brain, but also not too much to where I'm like not focused on my meal. So it's either that or like I sit with my partner and we're like actively chatting, and that's enough stimulation for me as well. But it's different for everyone. Again, like you got to get curious about it. You got to trial and error. It's not like, oh, Stephanie said to watch YouTube. Okay, I try YouTube. It doesn't work. Okay, I'm a failure. That just means that like that's not for you. So yeah, just kind of get curious about what nurtures presentness for you and what distracts you.
Amazing. That is a perfect answer. It makes me feel much better.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, so my last question for you is really just, I mean, we've already touched on a ton of things that people can do, but if there's anything else that is like an actionable step someone can do to either kind of start onto that intuitive eating journey or just maybe heal some of their over and under eating habits.
Totally. So similar to what I mentioned earlier about like, okay, in order to have confidence, you have to get clear on like what your standards are. That would be my first recommendation is like, what do you want your eating habits to look like? What do you want them to consist of? And also, how do you want them to feel? Because that matters most, obviously. But so I would really get clear on like what matters to you and what your kind of like non-negotiables are for your eating habits. And you need to be really realistic when you're brainstorming this. Okay. So again, make sure you're keeping a pulse on whether those goals are coming from like yourself or like external outside BS that you have absorbed. But for example, like on a very basic level for like most intuitive eaters, things that we're thinking about is like, okay, I want to eat 3 meals every day, like, and roughly X amount of like fruits and veggies throughout the day, on most days, not every single day because it's not going to happen. I still want to enjoy my Doritos and not feel bad about it. And I want to be able to eat ice cream without guilt, but also be able to stop when I'm full so that I don't feel uncomfortable. Things like that, right? So I would sit and like, first of all, before you even make a plan for how to change your eating habits, you need to have a very clear and concise goal. If you just say, really want to eat healthier, then you're probably just going to like try a bunch of random shit that doesn't make sense for you and try to adhere to a bunch of external expectations and standards that like aren't going to be sustainable. So if you're trying to eat like other people, then you're never going to have confidence in your eating because everyone's expectations and standards are so different. So yeah, I would say first things first is to get clear on your goals. And then some of those things that I listed, right? Like eating 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Are you doing that? If you're not, stop worrying about everything else. Stop worrying about the diet quality. Stop worrying about supplements. Stop worrying about all that stuff. If you are not eating 3 meals a day, we need to start there. And some people it's 4, depending on their work schedule or whatever. And then are you honoring your hunger and fullness? Are you eating some fruits and veggies? Are you still doing that emotional overeating and stress eating? And how are we taking space and time to unpack that? But yeah, so the actionable steps would be making the plan, and then based on that plan, start making some baby steps, because you'll definitely want to take things one little step at a time, not all at once.
Yes, that's perfect. Awesome. Okay, well, I like to end with kind of like a fun little question. And so I think this is very appropriate. What's been your kind of go-to snack lately?
Oh, my go-to snack. Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot because I change things a lot.
Okay, I can share mine first.
Okay, go, please.
Okay, very simple. We get these, I don't even know the brand, but they're these gluten-free almond crackers at Costco, and they are like, they've got that great amount of salt. They're kind of like a wheat thin, but like more like flavorful, like almost garlicky.
Oh yeah, love.
And then a little Tillamook cheddar cheese. They make the perfect combo, and it's a super easy snack. So that's been my go-to lately.
That sounds so delish. I love a cheese and cracker moment. That's like really high on my list of some type of like flavored cracker. I also love goat cheese as a dip in my crackers. Like that's one of my faves. But recently, and this one is so unexciting and actually makes me look totally like a health nut, and I'm so sorry everyone, but it's actually a weird textural hyperfixation that I'm on right now, and I can't explain it. But I have like the single serve Greek yogurts, and I have like a strawberry one that has like strawberry stuff in it, like a little jam at the bottom. Then it's from Aldi. And then I also have these like snack pack of peanuts, which like is so random because I hate peanuts usually plain, but for some reason when I like pour like a lot of them to where there's like several peanuts per scoop, it's got to be the right proportion of each of the Greek yogurt. The ratio to Greek yogurt to peanut has to be perfect. But every bite is perfect, and it does something for me. I think it'd be even like better.
A peanut butter jelly moment.
Yeah. And I said, I think it'd be even better with like actual peanut butter, but that's where my executive function just like stops. And like, I'm not doing more than a 2-ingredient snack. Like it's just not happening. So I think it's just like the efficiency of like pulling the single serve, taking the individual peanut pack and dumping it in there, and just like having this weird, crunchy, creamy moment. So that's been my recent one.
Sounds delightful. And I too love the single serve Greek yogurts. They're satisfying. So not a health nut. I think it's very understandable, reasonable.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that validation.
Yes, amazing. Okay, well, before we end, if there's anyone who's like feeling inspired by today's conversation, they want to find you and your information and services, where can they go to do that?
Totally. So you can go to intuitiondietitian.com, or you can go to my Instagram, which is just _intuition_dietitian. Those are the two places that you can find me nice and quick.
Perfect. Awesome. And I will link those in the show notes as well. So, perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been perfect.
Yay.